Well, good evening. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. This is a North Carolina Climate Pollution Reduction Planning Grant Public Information Session. My name is Julie Woosley. I'm the Director of the State Energy Office here in the Department of Environmental Quality. And before we get started, I do just want to mention a few things about our event tonight. First of all, this event is being recorded, so please be aware of that. And by participating, you're agreeing to having it recorded. If you have questions during or either during the presentations or at the end in the question and answer period, please put them in the chat so we can make sure to follow up with any questions we don't have time to answer tonight or don't have the answers for, so we can get back to you on those. We do have a number of folks on the call tonight. I'm going to introduce them in a second, the ones who'll be presenting. But first, I want to point you to the QR code on your screen. For those who have not pre-registered for this event, please register so that you'll be able to have access to the presentation and the recording afterwards. And you can just use your phone to click on the QR code. It'll bring up a website and you can enter your information there. Let me start with introducing the team that you're going to hear from tonight. So first, I'd like to introduce the other speakers. We'll start with Connor Mulderick in the governor's office. Connor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Julie. Hi, everyone. My name is Connor Mulderick. I'm the climate change, or one of two, climate change policy advisors in the governor's office. And yeah, I'll kick it over to Stephanie. Nice to meet you all.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Bolliard. I am the Senior Engineer to the Assistant Secretary with North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Mike?
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm Mike Abrazinskis. I'm the Director of the Division of Air Quality in the Department of Environmental Quality. Julie,
That's right.
Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. That's all the speakers. I also just want to take a second to recommend some additional folks here. Big thanks to Nigel Bryant, Sarah Edwards, Cindy Furtenbaugh, and David Stratton for their work to set up this WebEx event tonight. Also want to recognize, and you'll hear about this later, but the CPRG is not just a DEQ effort in North Carolina. We're working with a number of different state agencies. You already heard from Connor in the governor's office, but I just want to recognize anyone who may be here from Department of Transportation, Department of Commerce, or other entities that we've been working with. I think I saw Natasha from DOT. Is that correct? You want to introduce yourself? She may be muted, but do want to recognize, I believe she's on, and I don't know if anyone else is on from DOT or Commerce, but do want to thank those entities for their work on this as well. In a minute, we're going to start with a presentation about the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, what the program is, and tell you more about what we're doing here in North Carolina related to that. At the end of that time, we'll have breakout sessions. There'll be breakout sessions for a number of different sectors, which will be shown on the screen at that time, and you can choose which breakout session you'd like to move into. We'll have someone to moderate each of those and to take notes to make sure we capture your comments, your thoughts, your input on that. We'll also, as I mentioned before, have the chat. We'll be monitoring that to answer any questions and gather that feedback. And towards the end, we'll also show some other ways that you can submit feedback or comments. And then at the end, after the breakout session, which will last 30 minutes, we'll come back together as a whole group. We'll do a quick report out from each of those sector groups, and we'll open the floor for additional questions. When I say open the floor, because of the format of the webinar tonight, we do need you to put those questions in the chat, and then one of the moderators will read them out and we will answer them. And if we can't answer them, we will get back to you with that. In fact, we'll get back to everyone with the answer to that question. All right, so let's get started tonight. The first thing I want to do before we go into the details is talk a little bit about what our goals are tonight. So we do want to introduce you to the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant programs, and there are multiple ones. And we want to talk about how North Carolina is leveraging our planning grant here in the state to identify ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions around the state and across all the states, as All states in the country have the opportunity to apply for these funds. And then we also want to tell you, and I mentioned this earlier, just some additional ways to provide us feedback. And before we go into the CPRG details, let me take one quick step back and talk a little bit about the different funding opportunities that are coming from the federal government at this time. So you may have heard some of the letters out there like IRA or BIL, BIL, and it can be a little confusing. So let me start by defining those opportunities. So BIL is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and IRA is the the Inflation Reduction Act. Both of these were passed by Congress at the federal level, and they have slightly different focuses. So IRA in general is mostly in the form of tax credits, incentivizing energy efficiency and decarbonization, where BIL, which is also sometimes called IIJA, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that is really more in the form of grants. And so those grants go to provide investment in infrastructure and jobs, much as the name says. And there's a focus on providing both of those in underserved areas across the country. So IRA funding will be available to address climate emissions in very specific areas, such as buildings, transportation, industry, through those tax credits. And there will also be tax credits available to homeowners. You may have heard about these if you want to install certain energy efficiency appliances in your home. Under BIL, funding will be available to provide grants to invest in infrastructure, communities, and resilience to climate change. So that might be resilience of our electricity grids or testing new forms of power generation. So the easy way I find to remember it is IRA, similar to IRS, that's mostly tax incentives, and BIL is mostly the grants. In this particular case, CPRG is actually funded through EBA because it relates to climate pollution, and that money that comes from Congress goes through EPA and out to the states. And now we're going to go in more detail about exactly what that looks like. Next slide, please. So why are we looking at climate pollution reduction? I think everyone here is aware of the frequent extreme weather events that we do experience here in North Carolina. They disrupt our way of life, they disrupt our industry, they affect our economy, and they can affect the health and safety of residents. Here in North Carolina, and I just looked this up because I was curious how we stack up, but for hurricanes, we are actually the third highest state for hurricane damage in the United States. 413 hurricanes and tropical storms have affected North Carolina since we began keeping records. 120 of those have happened just since 1980. And you see here on the screen specific information for one particular hurricane, Hurricane Florence, which was in 2018. Over $17 billion in damages happened in North Carolina alone. Over 51 counties were impacted. Over 5,000 people needed rescuing on a single day that day. And over 21,000 people needed emergency shelter. So you can see what the significance of these storm events can be to our state. Next slide, please. When we look at our emissions here from North Carolina, they're actually quite significant on a global scale. We are the 14th highest greenhouse gas emitting state in the US. We are the 9th most populous state. And if we were a country, our emissions would be ranked a little higher than countries like Belgium, Chile, Austria, and Denmark, putting us as the 40th country, if we were a country, in the world for emissions. So these emissions do matter, not just here in North Carolina, but even globally. Next slide, please. And the impacts that happen from climate change and from these extreme weather events impact some areas more than others. Obviously, that makes sense when you're thinking about hurricanes and how they impact the coast more, or low-lying areas may be more impacted by flooding, but also more vulnerable communities, those that have less ability to prepare for these events and less ability to recover from these events, are going to be more impacted. And that could be social vulnerability, that could be infrastructure and housing disparities, inequalities in policies and programs. A lot of things can impact those vulnerable communities more, and they have a harder time recovering. So part of the focus here is how we can help those communities prepare for and recover from these storm events. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to pass it over to Connor, who's going to talk to you more about the federal funding.
Great. Thanks so much, Julie. I appreciate that. As Julie kind of already mentioned, she gave a quick walkthrough of a brief overview of the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law and all the wonderful federal opportunities that we're all swimming in at the moment. But just drilling down a little bit more specifically into the Inflation Reduction Act, signed on August 16th, 2020 by President Biden. It was a very large bill that touched on a whole host of aspects, from healthcare to environmental policy to the tax credits and incentives across a variety of issues that Julie talked about. But just but climate investment was one of the biggest focal points of the bill itself. Just overall, the IRA, through all of the different kind of mechanisms involved in it, is expected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the country by 40% by 2030. And then also center the disadvantaged communities that have historically not gotten the level of support that has been needed throughout the country's history. So it's an unprecedented investments in both of those areas, with a lot of overlap between the two. As Julie mentioned, a lot of the bill of the Inflation Reduction Act itself was focused on kind of more consumer-focused tax credits, things focused on industry tax credits, a lot of things you focus seeing like battery manufacturing, electric vehicle manufacturing, jobs popping up. But one of the areas where they did focus on grant funding through various federal agencies is the Climate Pollution Reduction Act, or Climate Pollution Reduction Program, funded through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on exactly what this whole program we're all here to find out about is all about. So next slide. Perfect. So CPRG, as it's lovingly known, is split up into two different phases. We're in the middle of the first phase right now for the planning grants. North Carolina, as well as the Charlotte and Raleigh Council of Governments and the Eastern Tribe of Cherokee Indians all got planning grants to develop priority climate action plans, and I'll give some more information on that in a moment. But we're in the middle of that right now, and we're gearing up for phase 2 of the implementation grants. I'll give a little more info on exactly when these opportunities and deadlines are coming up and how they kind of work together. But that's kind of the main big picture here. It's split up into these two phases. So what does the program want to do? What are our goals for leveraging this program and expanding on all the great work that we've been doing as a state over the last, especially over my boss, Governor Cooper's term, administration, the last 2 terms. So we have a host of well-established leadership initiatives. We have existing statewide plans, efforts grounded in science, as outlined here. We've been poring over, I think it ended up being 48 different state level plans and reports that have all been prepared with great ideas and strategies on how best to deal with climate change. And we're pulling out the best ideas. And the goal is to leverage all this great work that gives us a leg up over a lot of other states that are relatively new to the game, that are also participating in this program. But the main overall objective is to improve health and well-being of North Carolinians by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving air quality, and a host of co-benefits that we'll talk about in a moment, especially centered on these low income and disadvantaged communities that come along with these climate investments. These co-benefits are going to be really big deals in a lot of areas. So where are we? They're just getting into these timelines. It's quick. For folks that are wanting to participate, for all of us working on it, the EPA is moving. And we all wish we had a little bit more time to really get into the meat of things and flush things out a little bit more. So I wanted to thank everybody for bearing with us and our quick timelines that we've put forward for soliciting feedback and other things of that nature. But as you can see, the Priority Climate Action Plan that we're utilizing, the phase 1 of the program, that's due March 1st. That is coming up. That is less than 2 months. And so we are consolidating all the feedback that we've gotten, soliciting some more, and wanting to make sure that everybody's priorities are covered in that plan. Implementation grants are going to be due a quick turnaround 1 month later on April 1st. That's where we're applying for the big dollars. And I'll get into those in a little bit more in a minute, that are basically designed to implement that priority climate action plan that's due on March 1st. And then following up, and because that first one has to be a priority climate action plan, it has to be just specifically things that we're considering for the implementation grants, things that are ready to go now that we've already considered, leveraging these state plans and other initiatives that are a little bit more fully baked. For folks that have ideas, but the timeline's just a little bit too quick, but they want to make sure the state's thinking about it and integrating it into other plans going forward and future actions. We have a comprehensive climate action plan, the CCAP, which is going to be due July of next year. And then we also have to submit a final status report in 2027. But we're not going to get into those too much now because, as you can see, that main focus is those first two items here, which are coming up quick. So here's basically what are we considering as far as part of this program. In terms of what EPA is looking for, the answer is essentially everything. Like if you can come up with an idea that reduces greenhouse gas emissions and you can prove how many emissions it reduces and you can convince EPA that it's a good idea and it's cost effective, it can come from power, transportation, industry, commercial buildings, waste management, agriculture, natural lands, all the things listed here. And we'll break out into panels focused on these areas to discuss in a little bit. So definitely want to hear your ideas, but it's kind of the world's our oyster when it comes to this program. In terms of the priority climate action plan that I mentioned that the planning grants are funding our development of, there's kind of four main pillars listed here that we're really focusing on. Number one, it has to reduce emissions. We're updating our greenhouse gas inventories, quantifying how many GHG greenhouse gas emissions are going to be reduced by across particular measures. Second, it's and not in any particular order here, honestly, is that they're all incredibly important, but one of the second pillar here is focused on community-based benefits. So looking at those low-income disadvantaged communities that are all over the state across a host of different urban, rural, suburban environments that all have different needs and issues that they're dealing with. So we want to make sure that all of these programs are benefiting those communities in tangible ways. Another part of this is that we need to make sure we have the authority to implement these ideas. There's a ton of really great ideas out there on how to deal with climate change, but as state agencies in North Carolina, we don't have a full bandwidth to deal with all of the different levers that hypothetically could be imagined. Like we have certain constraints and we need to make sure that we have the authority to implement those measures. And then finally, we need to develop the clean energy workforce that's so desperately needed to decarbonize our entire economy. We're looking at jobs that are college educated, but also those that are not, that don't require a college degree to be able to pursue. We're looking at electricians and construction workers, folks that want to work in green infrastructure that takes a more natural approach to dealing with things like stormwater runoff and things like that. We want to revitalize the way we build our built environment. Like there's a ton of opportunity here to really change the way that we do things for the better, and building that workforce is going to be an important part of this. So find the big money CPRG implementation grants. Essentially, they're competitive grants. They have to be based on that PCAP that I mentioned, so you can't apply for anything that's not based out of a submitted PCAP. And I'll get more into kind of the application process in a moment, but essentially there's two competitions. There's a general competition for states and municipalities, and then there's one specifically for tribes and territories. The general competition is that $4.3 billion pot of funding that I mentioned that states and municipalities can go after. And then there's a $300 million set aside for tribes and territories with a slightly longer time frame. Tribes and territories can also compete in the general competition as well, but EPA wanted to make sure that there was a specific set aside there as well. We can talk more about how exactly this funding is going to get split up at EPA. As you can see on the side, there's a range. EPA is anticipating giving $200 to $500 million individual awards, and how that shakes out across different funding tiers will kind of determine how many grants they're going to plan on awarding. So it's a little bit up in the air at the moment, but that's the range. Okay, and so everybody wants to know, how do you apply? to be able to actually sign your name on an application to submit one, you have to be a state, local, or federally recognized tribal government. Applicant, to be an eligible applicant, you have to, it's a little complicated, so I'm trying to think of the best way to make sure I explain it clearly. Applicants have to either have received the initial planning grants, or they have to be applying for funding to support greenhouse gas reduction measures that are listed in the North Carolina state government PCAP that we submit. So that's why we want to make sure it's broad, encompass all the ideas that folks have, and make sure that even if any locum has wanted to pursue anything that wasn't under that state or that didn't get planning funds, they're eligible to do so. There's two types of applications. There's an individual application that the state is submitting, and any eligible entity can submit. But as far as we're thinking on this at the moment, we definitely encourage folks to coordinate with us to be included as a partner as part of that individual application that we're submitting. Happy to discuss more thinking on that later, but we want to try to coordinate as much as we can, because EPA has signaled that coordinated approaches to applications are going to score better, because they think they see them as more durable kind of policy solutions that have been more well thought through, and rather than everybody kind of going it alone. So we definitely encourage folks to partner with us, make sure their priorities are listed in our individual application. For projects that are ready to go, hit the ground running, we're able to give out funding directly for specific projects, or the state can run our own kind of statewide competitive process where we solicit ideas on how best to kind of implement a specific measure. So both strategies are possible, but we really want to encourage folks to kind of get under that state umbrella for our application. And there's also one other type. You could also pursue a coalition application. Each eligible applicant, can lead one coalition application with other eligible applicants. It is challenging. It's the same deadline by April 1st. You do have to submit a memorandum of agreement to EPA signed by all the members that is legally binding. So, like I said, the takeaway is talk to us and get into the North Carolina application. And the final note here at the bottom, want to make sure everyone's aware, is that there is no cost sharing or matching funds required for this program. EPA, it's 100% match, 100% grant program that will fully fund any initiatives that are submitted in an application or in EPA grants. It cannot be used for matching requirements for another federal program. So if there's a federal program that has a 20% match but covers 80% funding, this can't be used for that 20. However, EPA is encouraging us to think of ways to leverage other federal funding opportunities that don't fully meet the need of what they're designed to do. So potentially another federal program could pay for half of a project. This program could pay for half of the project. It just can't be used as like a required match for that first half. Happy to talk further. Gets a little more complicated, but happy to talk further if folks are interested. And I will now get off of your screens and kick it over to Mike to talk about our inventory here.
All right, thank you so much, Connor, and good evening, everyone. So the concept we're talking about here tonight, again, is the development of a priority climate action plan, or PCAP, and ultimately a set of priority climate action measures that will drive emissions of GHGs lower. So that process starts with a data-driven analysis, one that will answer the following questions. First, where did the GHGs come from currently? Next, what source sectors contribute the most? And then, how are those emissions projected to change in the future with current on-the-books policies and measures? At the end of that data-driven analysis, we should all have a vision of what areas need to be addressed and what areas we can best apply the CPRG and other infrastructure funding opportunities to help achieve additional emissions reductions. So let's start with a discussion of this baseline data set. That is our state's GHG emissions profile. We often refer to that as the emissions inventory. So that's represented here on the slide. This is 2018 baseline data, and it shows the relative contributions on a percent basis of the total statewide GHG emissions of each of the different source sectors that contribute GHG emissions. And you see that the transportation sector is our leading source of GHG emissions in North Carolina. That's followed closely by the electric generation and use sector. And then the industrial sector, the ag sector, waste, residential, and commercial sectors follow as shown there on the slide. This accounting of emissions also recognizes North Carolina's tremendous potential to offset carbon emissions through our land and forest resources. And so our latest analysis shows that land use and forestry sequestered 26% of the total gross emissions in 2018. Another interesting data point is that 81% of the total emissions comes from fossil fuel combustion across all the different source categories. And when compared to a 2005 baseline, our 2018 GHG inventory shows a 23% reduction, which is good, but still some work to do to get to our state goal of net zero emissions by 2050. Next slide, please. All right, so this table's a little busy, so I'll walk us through it. It shows the projected emissions and how they're going to change in the future with on-the-books policies and measures through 2030. And so when I say on-the-books policies and measures, I'm really referring to those that do not yet include any of the reductions anticipated through the implementation of the IRA or BIL funding or other recent funding opportunities in North Carolina focused on reducing GHGs. So again, a little bit about the table. The upper 2/3 of the table here shows the projected emissions across various source sectors. And we also include a line at the next to last row of the table showing the projected emissions of sequestered carbon through our land and forest resources. And then the bottom row on this table, which is the red text, shows the difference between all of the emissions from the various sources is broken out on the upper half of the table, and the sequestered carbon from the sinks. And so that's illustrated as net emissions there at the bottom of the table. And you can see we have some work to do to get to net zero emissions by 2050. But again, these projections only go out to 2030 at this time. So a few observations here. Let's look at the transportation line, the transportation sector emissions. You see a relatively flat profile with modest decreases projected over time out to 2030. This illustrates that we should continue to keep this sector as a priority focus for additional reductions. We could also look at the projection line for the electric generation and use sector. That's the top row of data here. And we see a little steeper projection of emissions decreases between now and 2030. We expect even greater reductions in that sector than what's shown here as we transition to a lower carbon intense generation mix in North Carolina, including significant no carbon generation sources as a result of a session law that passed in 2021, also known as House Bill 951. Next slide, please. So a few additional notes here on the leading source sectors of GHG emissions in our state. Again, in the transportation sector, we're anticipating federal vehicle standards will help us achieve additional reductions of a variety of GHG emissions and other funding opportunities that we've recently implemented, such as the Volkswagen settlement and the Diesel Emission Reduction Act grants in the Division of Air Quality. Those are helping reduce emissions in the transportation sector. And on the electric generation and use sector, the aforementioned session law 2021-165, also known as House Bill 951, also known as the Energy Solutions for North Carolina Act, which Governor Cooper signed into law in October of 2021. That'll help drive GHG emissions downward as we transition to a lower carbon generation mix, including significant no carbon renewable generation resources. And that law aims to get a 70% reduction in GHG emissions from this particular sector by 2030. But the bottom line here is additional strategies, solutions, and investments are needed to get the state to the net zero emissions goal by 2050. All right, so that's the end of my couple of slides. I'll turn it over now to my colleague Stephanie for the next segment. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. So now that we've talked a bit about our level setting of what our current North Carolina greenhouse gas inventory is and understanding the broader aspects of the climate pollution reduction grant program via EPA, we're going to delve into how we're developing our priority climate action plan. From this slide on, we're going to be talking about measures and actions that aim to reduce climate pollution or greenhouse gas emissions across North Carolina, across various sectors. So here, the goal is to identify these greenhouse gas measures that can either be programs, policies, or projects that are aimed to help meet North Carolina climate goals. The way that we're doing this is through a multi-step process where we begin with our existing reports that North Carolina has developed as a leader across the country in the area of climate pollution reduction. When we develop that list and combine all of the report, our goal is to look at our synthesis of our current reports and understand what gaps might be there. Those gaps might just be due to the advancement in science, a sector that might not have been a priority or a focus at the time when various reports were developed, and so forth. The third step, and we'll go over this in a little more detail in subsequent slides, is we want to quantify and qualify the benefits of each of these measures as a way to then prioritize our measures across the state that will not only be included as priority actions in our priority climate action plan, but also will be a means for us to narrow our focus on priority areas for our implementation grant. So step 5, this is where we're at right now. We also want to obtain stakeholder feedback per stakeholder feedback processes such as today's public information session. We will make the comprehensive list of measures available for public comment. And we will also make our priority climate action plans also available for public comment prior to that March 1st deadline. Once we get our finalized stakeholder feedback, we will incorporate that into our final priority climate action plan that will be submitted to EPA. And one thing that's also going to be important to note is that feedback will also help us inform and refine our approach to applying for implementation grants. Next slide. So to go into a little more detail about how we got from step 1 to step 4. So the synthesis of our existing reports was accomplished by one of our consultants by going through a total of 48 different climate-related reports that have been developed over the past few years. A lot of these reports are aimed at meeting various executive order goals and also relate to our net zero goal by 2050. Going through those reports, all programs, policies, measures, actions were culminated into that comprehensive list of measures that again will go out for public comment. And we wanted to categorize them by sector and make sure that the sectors that we focus on were also noted in the greenhouse gas inventory that Mike Abrzinskis just presented. So another important aspect is going to be a gap analysis. We're currently undergoing that right now. Our goal is to expand some targeted areas, for example, waste management, natural working lands, and various industrial sectors. And during that process, we're evaluating the various benefits, not only greenhouse gas reductions, but also EJ, environmental justice and equity. How do these measures benefit underserved and underrepresented communities broadly across North Carolina? Resiliency, cost savings, workforce development. As Connor mentioned, that's going to be key to driving our green economy. And then also looking at health benefits. So what are some benefits of reducing air pollutants, which then will improve air quality? Next slide. So this is a high-level breakdown. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but it's more for illustrative purposes. We're showing we have over 300 measures, programs, policies, and so forth that were illustrated in those 48 reports. As you can see on the far left, these bars are organized from highest to lowest in terms of the number of measures. As you can see, the transportation sector has been a well-established and a well-studied sector in North Carolina on how to decarbonize. When we move down to agriculture, commercial buildings, and waste management, specifically focus on landfills, we see that the measures are not as robust as power sector transportation's carbon sequestration. So that's one of our key goals of leveraging our planning grant, is to expand those areas and allow our report, our priority climate action plan and our comprehensive climate action plan to be as comprehensive as possible. Next slide. So this is a bit repetitive, but reiterating that we are putting we have a framework in place for us to prioritize these measures. These are going to be not only based off the amount of reductions for that measure broadly across North Carolina, but also focusing on how it will allow us to accomplish our net zero 2050 goal. What are the potential improvements in air quality around surrounding communities? Are there any barriers for implementation? Those barriers could be policy related. They could be technical readiness is not quite there. And it could also be financial. But one thing I also want to mention that when we talk about innovative approach in terms of implementation and novelty, it could be an existing approach that just hasn't been applied in a certain sector or hasn't been applied broadly across North Carolina. So if you do have any ideas or you do have any suggestions, keep in mind it doesn't have to be some new technology, but it can be something that's already shelf ready. And then lastly, but most importantly, is how are these measures and sectors specifically going to positively benefit our underserved and underrepresented communities? Next slide, please. So what is a PCAP measure? These are just some illustrative examples that came from EPA around the transportation, building, and power programs. This presentation will be made available, so you can definitely review this in more detail, but we'll just give some illustrative, relatable examples in a few different sectors. For example, vehicle electrification. A measure could be providing rebates or an incentive program to expand electric fleets, such as schools or transit buses. It could be looking at state fleet electrification planning and how to actually procure those electric vehicles. Decarbonizing buildings could be supporting the adoption, training, and compliance with building codes. Distributed energies. It could be looking at not only studying, but looking at the implementation opportunities for community centers and parking lots, for distributed solar across the state, and so forth. Next slide, please. But a few other things that we're considering is we want to be able to develop opportunities that are immediately scalable, that will benefit underserved and underrepresented communities, improve air quality, but most importantly, also focusing on workforce development. These measures and opportunities could include demonstration and pilot projects, qualifying contractors for technical studies, marketing and sharing lessons learned, and it also can focus on measurement and verification. Some other reduction opportunities that could be targeted through this program include things like more efficient and cleaner industrial processes, ways to more effectively manage thermal loads. So when you think about thermal loads, you think about it's going to get cold tonight. So what is going to be needed to ensure your temperature is at the right temperature, so increasing heat. But what energy is needed to maintain that temperature? Looking at the use of clean and low carbon fuels, improving landfill gas capture and reuse, and then lastly, looking at opportunities to reduce the carbon that is embodied in materials by reducing their greenhouse gas footprint. Next slide. Now, the way that we are going to take our measures, look at the associated burdens that those measures could improve for a community, And we're going to align that with existing robust maps and community databases, such as the Climate and Environmental Justice Screening Tool and EPA's EJ Screen, to identify our underserved and underrepresented community. And our goal is to have at least 40% of our implementation grant go to those communities. So the one way that we're going to determine need is by associating those improvements to burdens that some communities might have, identify where those burdens are being realized in a community, and then it'll allow us to prioritize where a measure can also be implemented. But also to note, what's going to be very important about our stakeholder engagement is we want to also understand specific needs for those communities and get their engagement and buy-in and make sure that there's something that is needed in their community and make sure it is tailored towards a approach that is going to be widely utilized across that community. Now, one thing we will ask is you can either snap the QR code or go to this link, and you can use this tool to look at your surrounding communities, identify what burdens might be being experienced, and if you have any communities that you feel like should be on our radar and make sure that it is, you're welcome to submit those project ideas to us. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julie Woosley to go over next steps and timelines.
Thank you, Stephanie. So now we're going to move into our breakout sessions. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about stakeholder engagement. So that's why we're here tonight, to engage with you all and make sure we can answer any questions you have about this work that we're doing. We're doing that through a series of webinars, and we have one more webinar next Tuesday evening. We've had workshops, including one that was focused on meeting with industry to find out their needs, concerns, and priorities. And then we have online feedback additionally. So there's an online form you can fill out to send us any of your project ideas. I see some project ideas coming up in the chat. We will make sure those are included. You're also welcome to complete the online form or send us an email, and there'll be more information on that later in the slides. Next, please. And this just lists that last webinar, January 9th, and a few of the ones that have already happened. We also had 2 in-person events in November and December. Next slide, please. So I did want to talk just a little bit about the approach to low-income and disadvantaged community engagement. So low-income and disadvantaged communities are identified using environmental justice mapping tools, such as the map that Stephanie just showed you. So the CJust and EJ Screen maps are different ways to determine where those areas are and to share that information. And you can use that QR code or that website address to go and look at your community. But what we plan to do is partner with local with local organizations such as councils of government, community leaders, local governments, advocates, and DAC partners to promote these events and encourage attendance. And we will incorporate and adjust our final PCAP based on that feedback and update our progress regularly using as plain language as we can on the website and through other outreach opportunities. So this slide talks a lot about outcome outreach to LIDAC communities, but this is something we're doing statewide to all communities to make sure people are aware of this work, where our focus areas are and why, and to hear your feedback and make sure we can include that in the PCAP. I know you heard Connor say that any project that we want to fund with the implementation grants has to be included in either the statewide or one of the local planning grant and their PCAP. So that's what part of the reason we're here tonight. Next slide, please. So in addition to talking about impacts to communities, and I know we talked about that a little bit in the last slides, we also want to look at potential advantages and benefits to communities. Reducing the use of fossil fuels and combustion points with those fossil fuels will create a lot of other benefits for those communities. It can improve air quality. It can reduce the very fine particulate matter that can get in your lungs and can trigger asthma. It can improve outcome in terms of heart disease and health, but others as well. And you see quite a few listed here. Air toxics, indoor and ambient air health benefits, climate resilience, access to services and amenities, equitable access to clean energy, jobs created, workforce development opportunities, and reduced energy costs or burdens. And, I occasionally get asked about the workforce development piece. And the truth is that we will not be able to have a transition to a cleaner energy economy without workforce development. There are already shortages in some areas in construction and HVAC installation in terms of worker shortage, just because of the changing demographics of our communities. So it's just going to be very important to make sure that piece is there so that we can be successful. This is just another map that shows the North Carolina low-income and disadvantaged communities. The darker the color that you see on the map, the higher percentage of people in that area are below 200% of the federal poverty level. That's that FPL that you see. And based on a number of environmental indicators, socioeconomic indicators, environmental justice indices, and other indices, and there's totally 46 in total that are put together on that federal map. That's how we determine what those LIDAC communities are. And you see over to the right, another thing we look at obviously is energy burden. So areas that have low income, but also have higher energy costs, possibly because they're not served by a large utility such as Duke, but are served by a local co-op program, that can cause higher energy burdens in some areas. So that's another thing we want to be mindful of and figure out if there are ways we can lower energy burdens. And that could be through a variety of means. It could be through weatherization on residences. It could be through creating other sources of energy to help lower that cost overall. And it could be through improvement in transmission. Next, please. All right, so I think we are ready to move on to our breakout sessions. So we're going to put the list up here. We'll have 30 minutes in the breakout session. You can choose which of these that you'd like to move into. I don't believe there's a way to move between the sectors, but do know that whichever one you end up in, if you have a comment that's actually more related to another sector, you are still welcome to share that in that breakout session. We will be taking notes to capture all those comments. As I mentioned before, if you have a lot of detail and you want to make sure that's captured, feel free to fill out the online form or send us an email. But this is just a chance to let you hear from each other and have some discussions about what your priorities are as we develop these priority measures for the PCAP here in North Carolina, and also to hear if you have thoughts or ideas on what types of projects, programs, goals, policies, or plans you'd like us to develop as part of this. All right, are we ready to put up the links to move into the different breakout sessions?
Yeah, Nija's editing those sessions now, so they should be available soon.
Wonderful. And I saw a couple of questions. We'll put the link to the online form in the chat again. Yep. I see a number of different suggestions for various projects. We'll make sure to keep track of those. I see that someone already answered that yes, both the presentations and the recording of tonight will be available on our website.
And we're ready to start our breakout sessions, so I'm going to start those now.
Thank you.
Hey Sarah, some people are having a hard time getting access to the breakout rooms.
There should be a button at the bottom of your screens. It looks like four little squares. It says breakout sessions. I think you should be able to pick which breakout session you'd like to join after clicking that button. If you're using the app, I believe if you go to the top of your screen where it says show menu bar, there's also a button that says breakout sessions there, and you can join from that one.
If anyone else is still not able to access the breakout rooms, Bob said if you hit the three dots in the right-hand corner where it says panel options, it may be in that spot as well.
Let me check I don't see an option to manually add people to the breakout sessions, but let me check to see if it is in a different location on the browser version of WebEx. Maybe that's part of the problem. If you're using the browser, oh, sorry. If you're using the browser version of WebEx, you may need to scroll down on your screen to see all of the options at the bottom. They might be hidden for you. If you're still stuck, let me know which breakout session you would like to join. Actually, I think I only see 3 people still in the main room. So if you could put in the chat which breakout session you would like to join, let me see if I can go into that and add you from there.
Do any of you see a menu bar at the top of your screen? If so, it should allow you to do a drop down, and there's a breakout session option there, and you may be able to join from there.
Nija, I think if you go to breakout session assignments, you might be able to edit people's breakout sessions through that.
Where do you see that at?
At the top menu bar where it says breakout sessions,
Mm-hmm.
under breakout session assignments, it's grayed out for me, so I can't click it.
Yeah, it's grayed out for me too.
Okay.
I think Tommy, who wanted to get to electric power, I think he might have been able to get over.
Okay.
Let me see about the others.
I see Greg Cope in the main room, but I don't see that Greg chatted the room. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That might be everyone who wanted to move over then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think Tommy was able to get over because electric power looks like they did have another person join.
Okay. Great.
just a little bit longer, and then we will end the breakout sessions and bring everybody back to the main room.
Sounds great. Thanks, David.
Looks like we have people coming back already. Let's see if we can get our presenters back.
I think everyone will be coming back in about 27 seconds automatically.
If you didn't know how to get yourself out, they're waiting for the countdown.
Right.
There was no one in the waste section.
I saw that.
So
Thank you for helping out, Julie.
I bar hopped. Oh, I actually helped Carson too, and it was like really good timing.
Great. Here comes everybody. Welcome back. I can't hear you, Julie.
Thank you. We had a great discussion. I think we're ready for the report outs of the different sessions.
We are, so we can work through the report out. We'll just kind of give a couple of minutes for each sector. I'll put the slide back with the sectors on it. That way we can go from electric power, transportation, industry. We'll just go down the list.
That sounds good. So electric power, that's Carson Ford. Carson, do you want to give a quick update from your breakout session?
Yeah, absolutely. So we heard from a variety of people, both in the state and who work in the state but live elsewhere. So that's exciting to hear different perspectives about efforts in North Carolina. But we heard specifically centered around potential microgrid projects that are located in areas that are not serviced by an investor-owned utility, such as Duke, where potentially some of that power could be used to help during power outages, namely during hurricanes, but could also be leveraged with different with different tax credits that are available through other funding streams. So that was an interesting conversation. We also talked about landfills, potentially decommissioned landfills, being able to either put solar panels on those landfills, those areas that are not being used for anything after they're decommissioned, but also heard from the potential to use some of that biomass for electric power generation. That was another topic that had come up. And in general, just conversations centered around resiliency hubs co-located at schools, battery backups, and also with just the general temperature check on how municipalities are looking at using some of their land that they own. So the example came up of Siler City, and just curiosity from the general public about if any of those municipalities had been engaged with, centered around this effort.
Thank you. Wow, you covered a lot of topics there. And now we'll move on to the transportation sector. Mike or Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Appreciate it. We had 8 or 9 folks in the transportation breakout, and some of the topics we covered and some of the suggestions were to focus on infrastructure and infrastructure first, and then vehicles when considering electrification of fleets. We had a suggestion that urges us to reduce VMT, and look at options that'll reduce VMT overall. Also, multimodal transportation options, and then also to look at land use considerations. Again, electrification and charging infrastructure emphasized by several of our contributors tonight, and a focus on medium and heavy duty fleets, the importance of those. Publicly accessible charging was discussed. We had a couple questions about hydrogen, CNG, and RNG in the transportation sector. So we did our best to answer some of those questions. And then a few questions about how we actually generate the mobile source emissions inventory that I talked about earlier during the presentation. So we answered some of those questions and connected. And then also a few specific questions about some of the information that we've been collecting in the transportation sector with regard to specific projects that might have not been funded through the VW program. So lots of good thoughts, all on the radar, and lots more to digest moving forward. So I think that's the summary for tonight. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Industry sector, Bridget Parrish.
Hey there. So it was just me in that breakout session, so nothing to share tonight, unfortunately.
Well, thank you, Bridget.
You're welcome.
For residential and commercial buildings, I was the lead on that. We had some great discussions. We heard from a local government about the need for developing plans for carbon reduction, the difficulty in getting funding for projects to get started, and the difficulty in claiming those tax credits, the federal tax credits that now are available to local governments. But when you're part of a local government that doesn't file taxes, that can be a real challenge to find the folks who know how to do that. We talked a little bit about the potential for a pilot on heat pump water heaters that could potentially be done, a bulk install that could be used not just to help reduce energy burden in those homes and to remove a combustion source, but also could be a chance to look at the performance of the systems, since not every home has the space and air and things that are needed for that to be implemented. And a suggestion to have that work with the Weatherization Assistance Program on a pilot like that. We also talked about a potential pilot on preservation through trees, wetlands, ways to incentivize not developing wetlands, and other natural working lands issues. So we had a good discussion on that. Also had a suggestion about other ways to make homes sustainable, such as house size, moving to multifamily dwellings, using reclaimed lumber, and other things like that. And we talked some about the IRA rebates that are coming. And those are the savings for households, residential savings for installing energy efficient systems or appliances. And then for low and moderate incomes, there'll be electrification savings for example, if you were to replace your gas hot water heater with a electric or one of these new heat pump hot water heaters, getting funding for that from the federal government. So, and now we'll move on to waste and materials management. Stephanie.
We had a similar observation of that we had on industry. We didn't have anyone participating, but I did want to note one thing that was interesting is that when I did pop over to the electric power, landfills came up. So something that we would technically see from a waste management perspective, and the novelty of that idea was going beyond just how landfills are typically managed to figure out how you can turn that into a resource, specifically looking at solar panels, but potentially looking at an opportunity to have an energy park where there could be an educational opportunity for the community as well. So that was really interesting. So the note there is that you can have a project idea that might not fit into one sector. It could cross other sectors, and that's okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. And finally, agriculture and natural and working lands. Connor.
Yeah, I'll run this out. We had a 300% increase from the last webinar with 3 people in our group instead of 1. So Stephanie and Bridget, maybe people just like me more. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I promise. You're both very lovely people. But for the meat of what we actually discussed, few different project ideas got thrown around. especially focusing on the resilience aspects of natural agricultural and natural working lands, like restoration, looking at the restoration and preservation of wetlands and what all the different benefits those types of projects have outside of just the actual greenhouse gas reductions. Did kind of tell folks about just making sure everybody understands that the main focus of this particular program is on reducing greenhouse gases. So in this sector, we're really going to have to make sure we're looking at projects that very efficiently reduce sequester carbon in like the kind of short term when we're looking at natural carbon sequestration to the extent that you can in the short term with these types of projects. So, but at the same time, if there's a project that is really focused on community benefits and those co-benefits, those resilience ones, but it's not the most efficient greenhouse gas reduction strategy. Pointed a few folks to some other EPA programs that are focused on environmental justice, especially in like the eastern half of the state in some of these rural, lower income areas that might be a better fit. So we definitely want to engage and make sure that we're, even if CPRG isn't the best opportunity to get funding, we want to make sure we're pointing everyone in the right direction because there's a ton of opportunity out there, which actually makes it hard for this program to figure out where the need is. But besides that, besides just the throwing out ideas, also had some interest in kind of climate smart agriculture, best management practices, no-till farming, things of that nature that utilize less petroleum products and things that for at least more natural and like healthier soils, increased water retention, carbon retention, things of that nature. So that was definitely an interesting angle that we could definitely think about pursuing. And then finally, a little bit of discussion about like what some proven natural sequestration practices are for GHG reductions and focus and talked a little bit about some of North Carolina's, particularly like peatlands and precosins and things of that nature. So those really efficient sequester sources. So good conversation.
Great. Thank you, Connor. I see a question in the chat about sharing resources that Connor mentioned. So Connor, if you want to put some of those in the chat, I know that would be appreciated. And the couple of different comments have come up in more than one room. And so, David, if you don't mind going to that last slide that talks about some of those other federal opportunities, we can very quickly just talk about those to let people know. So several comments came out that might fit one of these other federal programs better. So I just wanted to make sure you all were aware of them. These are ones that North Carolina, the State Energy Office, is currently working on. I have to tell you, there are dozens and dozens of other opportunities out there. There are opportunities in terms of manufacturing to help support a clean energy future, opportunities related to workforce development, related to transportation, related to coastal issues, wide variety of different things. But the ones that our office is working on right now, I want to make sure you're aware of, Solar for All. So we're working with a group of entities in North Carolina to form the Energize NC group. We have a project we've submitted for $250 million for solar in North Carolina. And again, with emphasis on some of those underrepresented and underserved communities, and particularly with low and moderate income homes. So there'll be more coming out on that once we hear. We submitted our application. We're just waiting to hear how much will be awarded. Grid resilience, there are multiple different opportunities along these lines. We are working on both 40101D that's listed here, and also working to submit some other grid innovation projects. But the grid resilience project we're working on, that is looking for ways to reduce outages in North Carolina. So again, focusing on those underserved, underrepresented communities, areas with high levels of outages, and how those can be reduced. And that might be something like upgrading transmission lines or undergrounding them, looking for interconnections so that power can be brought up more quickly, and a variety of other grid-related issues. The Weatherization Assistance Program, I know I mentioned this in our breakout session, but we have a 5-year program supported by bill funding for $89 million total in North Carolina to support additional weatherization assistance. This is for low-income households across the state, and it provides weatherization. So it could be insulation, it could be roof repairs, window replacements, door replacements, or ceiling, changing out systems such as hot water heaters, heat, and so on. And that was approved by DOE in August, and that's in addition to our regular annual plan for weatherization. The IRA rebates I mentioned earlier, there are two. One has to do with improving systems in your home. It's open to anyone, but you could buy like a more efficient appliance or a more efficient hot water heater and get a rebate towards the cost of that. There's also an electrification program that's for low and moderate income homes. And again, that's to remove some of those combustion sources that can really be a trigger for childhood asthma. So to remove a gas stove and replace it with an electric stove, to remove a gas hot water heater and replace it with an electric, and so on. And that is expected to start. I don't know yet. North Carolina is in the process of applying for the planning grants. Using the planning grant, we will set up the program in North Carolina and then apply for that funding to make that available. I don't expect that before so the end of this year. And then there are other opportunities as well coming related to energy efficiency community block grants, an energy efficiency revolving loan fund, and others, but wanted to at least mention this. Thanks, David. And let's go back to that slide with the QR codes. So I know there's a lot of questions in the chat, and folks may have additional questions, but just wanted to point back again to the QR code on the left is a great way to submit any grant idea you have. If you have thoughts on what our priorities should be for how we spend this money, or if you have ideas on a specific project, policy, or plan related to how we can change emissions in North Carolina, please submit it here or send us an email. And I believe the email is at the bottom of the slide there, cprg@deq.nc.gov. And if you just want more information about the CPRG program, use that QR code or the link on the right here. And that'll take you to our website. We'll continue to update this website in the future as there are changes to the program or more information available. So Connor's put a number of different links in the chat. Some of those programs he was talking about.
Yeah, just two main ones here for more environmental justice, community focused programs. I feel like they're coming up a lot. There's one a $2 billion program called the Community Change Grants from EPA. There's further information on there where community-based organizations can go for technical assistance. The goal there is for community organizations to go after the funding and partner with local governments. The state is not involved in that one. State government cannot apply there. And then there's the other one was the Thriving Communities Grant Making Program. Just recently got announced that RTI. I don't have a ton of background with them personally, but I know that they do a lot of really good work with helping with applications and going after federal funds. They've been designated as the grant making entity to kind of work with communities and figure out how best to spend their allocation of that 600 million pot of funding for North Carolina and the broader kind of Southeast region. You can go to the EPA website there, and it should have a map for some of the technical assistance hubs and what states and what community company contact information for specific states.
Thanks, Connor.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking through some of the other questions in the chat. I don't know that we'll get through all of them, but I want to at least touch on a few that we can. There was one question about underserved and underrepresented communities that don't have access to running water. So none of the grants we've mentioned tonight would address that, but we can definitely put that person in touch with the Division of Water Infrastructure. There are funds available for communities to apply to extend water lines and get some grant funding or some very low cost loans to address those types of issues. So if whoever submitted that wants to send us a quick email or submit that form, we will get back to you with that information. And I see David has answered a number of the questions that have come in already in the chat. So thank you, David. I'm looking to see if there's any that are not answered.
We tried to get to everything. You may want to just double check that what was provided is accurate for folks.
If somebody has a question that they did not get answered, feel free to type it in the chat at the bottom and we'll take a look at that. Looking through still. Yep, I think someone had questions about the CPRG website. Yes, documents will be available there. One other thing I want to mention, we talked about the PCAP and how we're going to pull out our priority measures from those past plans and goals that we reviewed from North Carolina, the 40-some documents. Those will go out for public comment. I want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So if you want to get future updates about CPRG, you can sign up for that on the CPRG website that's linked here, and you'll get that information, or you can come back to this website to look for that information. And again, those will be some fairly broad measures, looking at where we want to focus in these different areas. So it could be something as broad as reducing energy usage in buildings or reducing combustion sources in buildings, something broad like that, so that a variety of different projects could be used to meet that goal. So I know we're a little past our time, but we're happy to stay a little longer if there's any other questions. I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, sharing your questions and thoughts with us. This is really helpful. All the comments will be saved, will be included in our PCAP, in our appendices, to make sure everyone else sees the variety of different comments and suggestions that we get. And we will use that as we develop both the PCAP and then the more comprehensive climate action plan that'll happen in 2025. And just to put that in context, the PCAP, this Priority Climate Action Plan, that will help guide what we do with our CPRG implementation grant. But that's just the first step in an ongoing effort to reduce climate pollution in North Carolina. That comprehensive plan will help direct our work in the future as well, with multiple funding sources. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your input.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.